You've been terrified of dying since you were old enough to understand what dying meant. That fear is probably sitting with you right now, in the background of your mind, the way it always is. But here's what nobody ever asks. Was your ancient ancestor huddling in the dark 50,000 years ago, afraid of death the same way you are? Or was their relationship with dying something fundamentally entirely different? Because if it was different, that changes everything we think we know about what it means to be human. Let's start with what we think we know. We assume that death anxiety is universal, that every human who ever lived, from the moment they developed the cognitive ability to understand mortality, experienced the same existential dread that you do, the same panic, the same desperate grasping for meaning. We think ancient humans were just like us, except with worse teeth and less stuff. But the evidence suggests something stranger. When archaeologists excavate Neanderthal burial sites from 130,000 years ago, they find something remarkable. The bodies aren't just dumped, they're arranged. Flowers are placed with them. Stones are positioned around them in patterns that serve no practical purpose. Ochre, a red mineral, is sprinkled over the remains. None of this keeps the body preserved. None of this serves the living. This is ritual. This is meaning-making. This is a response to death that goes beyond survival. But here's the thing that changes the interpretation. We don't actually know if Neanderthals feared death. We know they acknowledged it. We know they responded to it with something that looks like reverence or respect. But fear? That's a conclusion we're projecting onto them. Consider how modern humans experience death anxiety. We fear pain, we fear the unknown, we fear non-existence, we fear leaving things unfinished, we fear being forgotten. These fears are all intertwined with complex, abstract thinking, with the ability to imagine hypothetical futures, with the knowledge that we're unique individuals with unique plans and unique legacies that will end. Ancient humans had less of all that, not zero of it, but less. For most of human history, your identity wasn't what you achieved or what you accumulated. It was your role in the group. You were the hunter, the gatherer, the mother, the elder. Your continuation wasn't about your individual legacy. It was about the continuation of the group, the tribe, the lineage. When you died, you didn't disappear. You became an ancestor. You became part of the spiritual infrastructure of the community. You were woven into stories. You were spoken to. You mattered after death in ways that were concrete and ongoing. That's not nothing. There's evidence that ancient humans didn't experience the isolation in death that moderns do. In cultures across the world where traditional burial practices persisted longest, in Africa, in the Americas, in the Pacific, death was treated as a transition, not a termination. The dead remained in the village. They remained in conversation. They remained relevant. A person who died wasn't gone. They were transformed. Now, did ancient humans fear the dying process? Almost certainly yes. Pain is pain. Suffocation is suffocation. The body's instinct to survive is ancient and powerful. Watching a loved one decline is anguish regardless of your belief system. So the fear of death, the biological, visceral, instinctive fear, that was probably the same. But death anxiety, the existential kind, the kind that keeps you awake at 3 a.m. thinking about the void, that kind of fear might have been lower. Here's why. Your brain is wired to fear uncertainty. Ancient humans faced enormous amounts of practical uncertainty. Will we find food? Will we survive winter? Will predators come? But the spiritual and metaphysical aspects of death, those were handled. There were explanations, there were rituals, there were frameworks that transformed the incomprehensible into the integrated. Modern humans have the opposite problem. We've solved so many practical uncertainties. We have medicine and heating and food security. But we've created a massive metaphysical uncertainty. Most of us have no framework, no ritual, no community practice around death. We're left with pure abstraction, pure void, pure unknown, and that might actually be harder to live with. Studies show that people with strong religious or spiritual frameworks experience lower death anxiety than secular populations, not because they avoid thinking about death, but because they have a scaffold for understanding it. An ancient human in an animistic culture didn't have to invent that. It came with belonging to the tribe. It came with the cosmology everyone already agreed on. Death was familiar, even if it was unwelcome. But there's another layer to this. Ancient humans lived with mortality visible in ways we don't. Infant death was common. Child death was common. Adult death was frequent and undisguised. You saw it. You participated in the rituals around it. You understood it as a regular part of the world, not an aberration, not an enemy to be defeated by medicine and technology. When death is regular, when it's woven into the fabric of normal life, it becomes ordinary in a way that's almost protective. You don't fear ordinary, you accommodate it, you build your life around it. Modern humans, living longer and surrounded by the mythology that we can avoid death through enough medicine and enough money and enough optimization, have created a culture of death denial. We hide the dying, we hide the dead. We pretend death is an accident that shouldn't happen, rather than the defining feature of being alive. And then we're surprised that we're anxious. Ancient humans would have found this bizarre. So were ancient humans afraid of death? Yes and no. They feared the process, they feared pain, they feared loss, but they didn't fear death itself in the way you do, because death itself wasn't the anomaly that needs to be solved. Death was the baseline. It was the end point everyone acknowledged and everyone accommodated and everyone prepared for through ritual and belief. You're afraid of dying because you've been raised in a culture that tells you dying is a failure. They probably didn't feel that way. For them, dying was just the last thing everyone does. And when you stop fighting the inevitability of a thing, when you stop seeing it as an enemy, the fear transforms into something else. Not peace necessarily, but something quieter than what you carry.